Welcome to the Dugout Report, episode number 15. I am here with NBC LA Dodgers reporter Michael Duarte, and I am excited to hear what he has to say about the Dodgers and how they're doing as of now. And with the trade deadline approaching, it's definitely an interesting time. So welcome.
Thank you. Thank you for having me on.
So my first question was, what was your initial thoughts on the game tonight?
Yeah, I wasn't too surprised. Obviously, they took the first two of the series in what I think is dominant fashion, although Craig Kimbrell made it very interesting in the second game of the series there in the ninth inning, loading the bases, giving up a 2-run single to make it a 1-run game, and then getting bailed out by Trace Thompson's catch to end it. The first game, obviously, an absolute blowout, a rout, 13-0, a very typical Coors Field score as far as the 13 runs are concerned. In fact, the Dodgers had more runs than a Taco Bell after party, right? But tonight's game, I think people are surprised the Dodgers lost and didn't put up more offense, more of an attack. But, I've seen Clayton Kershaw struggle a lot at Coors Field. His off-speed pitches like the slider and curveball, they don't seem to have the same movement on them that they do when you're not playing at altitude. And when I talk to pitchers, it is the off-speed stuff. It is the curveball that tends to have the biggest effect when you're in the altitude. It's not like the grip is any different. It's not that the ball is any different. It's just the pathway and the movement of that actual curveball is just different. It doesn't like break as hard or as much there in the altitude. So Kershaw tends to struggle there, and it happened again tonight. So I'm not too surprised. But they have an opportunity to win the series tomorrow and take 3 of 4.
What do you expect the Dodgers to do once the deadline arrives?
Yeah, so they made a move today. It was kind of under the radar move. They picked up Chris Martin, not the lead singer of Coldplay, but a relief pitcher from the Chicago Cubs, right-handed pitcher. That's a guy that I think gives them much needed bullpen depth at a time right now when they're very depleted in that particular department. Their bullpen is extremely thinner than a 3-month-old bar of soap, if you will. And so when you have Brusdar Graterol on the injured list, you have Daniel Hudson out for the season, you have Tommy Canley on the injured list, you have Blake Trinan on the injured list. He's only pitched 1 time this year. You have a lot of guys injured right now. You're relying very heavily on Evan Phillips and Craig Kimbrell right now. So that gives you bullpen depth. Knowing Andrew Friedman the way I do, he is a savant when it comes to baseball trades. And so he has his hands in all sorts of pots. He's making multiple phone calls. I know he's called about Shohei Ohtani and the Angels, though I don't think Ohtani gets moved at all. I don't think even if the Dodgers had the right package for it, Artie Moreno, the much beleaguered owner of the Angels, would ever trade him to a Southern California rival in the Dodgers like that. He's thwarted the Dodgers in multiple things outside of just trades over the years, including the Dodgers wanting to build a AAA facility in Woodland Hills, California, and he thwarted that deal and kept them out in Rancho Cucamonga. So I don't think even if they could do something, they would send Shohei to the Dodgers. They're still in talks with Juan Soto, in my opinion, and from what I've told from sources, they're one of 3 teams that are in the running to get Juan Soto if he is indeed moved by the deadline. Although my gut instinct tells me that unless there's a team that's really desperate out there to part with potentially 4 top prospects, that it might be more possible that the Nationals just keep Juan Soto and maybe see what they can do in the offseason or this time next year at the trade deadline, when then he'll only have a year and a half left. So what I think, and obviously as far as the starting pitching market is concerned, Luis Castillo was the belle of the ball, so to speak, and he goes to the Seattle Mariners in a trade. The Dodgers were also interested in him, so he comes off the book. With him gone, I don't see many frontline starters available via the trade market, so I think the Dodgers probably don't go there. I think they stay with the starting pitching they have and hope that Walker Buehler can come back and be the ace that he's been, especially in the playoffs. Dustin May is a guy coming off Tommy John surgery. He could provide them some depth in the starting rotation towards the end of the season. season and perhaps in the bullpen into the postseason. Danny Duffy's a guy that nobody talks about. He's a guy that could come back probably around late August, early September, maybe. If so, that gives them depth there. So I think they're okay in the starting pitching department. I would assume they add one more relief pitcher probably by the deadline on Tuesday. And I also know that they've been in talks as far as potentially acquiring a right-handed bat. They've talked to the Marlins about Garrett Cooper. They've talked to the Boston Red Sox about JD Martinez. If they are wanting to get a right-handed bat and maybe just put this person into the everyday DH role, that could be a move they make. But right now, when you have the best record in baseball, when you're 12 games up in the NL West in the division, these are luxury things, right? You know, you're so good right now. You have guys out and injured, and when they get healthy, you're going to be even better. So these small moves, potentially in the micro lines, they can improve your team in the margins. And if a big fish makes sense for them and doesn't cost them that much, they might make that move and then put like a bat like that in DH, or in this case of Juan Soto, have probably one of the best outfields ever with Juan Soto, Cody Bellinger, and Mookie Betts, if they were to make that happen. So we'll keep an eye on them, but I definitely think for sure at least one more relief pitcher before the deadline comes.
What do you think about Juan Soto? Like, for example, if he ends up with the Dodgers, what do you think about the lineup and how it's going to be? And do you see any changes, any like extreme changes to the lineup, or do you think it's going to stick to the same as it was?
Yeah, that's a great question. First of all, I don't think it's going to happen with the Dodgers. It could, if the Dodgers really wanted to part with 4 prospects and top guys. We're talking guys like Bobby Miller. We're talking guys like Diego Cartaya, Miguel Vargas, Ryan Pepio. We're talking guys like this who the Dodgers really value. But if they did want to part with them, I think they have the ability to get Juan Soto. And I think what that does for them, before we talk about what the lineup would look like, is it unites Juan Soto with one of his best friends in all of baseball and in all the world, and that's Trey Turner, who happens to be a free agent at the end of this season. And I'm wondering if the Dodgers think, hey, we have Juan Soto, your best friend, a guy that you love and text all the time and call all the time and FaceTime all the time. We have him for 2.5 years. We know you want a big contract, but maybe sign a smaller deal that we can pay you a high annual average value, a high AAV, like in the 30 to 40 million range or something like that. And let's take part of this little next 2.5, 3-year window. It would be 3 playoff runs to try to win 1 or 2, maybe 3 more World Series and keep you guys together. If they think that would entice Trey Turner to stay, that might behoove them to make this move and give up prospects now, because they would have just an absolute dominant juggernaut of a team with that lineup. And so to answer your question, you're looking at a lineup with the big 3 at the front unchanged. And we're talking about Mookie Betts in right field batting first, Trey Turner, at shortstop batting second, Freddie Freeman, a longtime All-Star and an All-Star again this year, at first base. And then probably you slot Juan Soto right there in the cleanup. You would probably play Juan Soto in left field. You have Cody Bellinger in center field. You have Justin Turner at third base. You can even put Chris Taylor there if you want to give a day off. You can put Max Muncy there. Edwin Rios is coming back. He can play there. You have Gavin Lux at second base, who's hitting over 300. I believe he has the 3rd or 4th best batting average in the entire National League right now. Will Smith would probably bat 5th. He's your catcher. He's leading the entire MLB in home runs for catchers. It's a really nasty lineup. But if you added Juan Soto, it makes you very left-handed heavy. We're talking with Soto, Bellinger, Freeman, Lux, all left-handed hitters. So that would have 4 to 5, Max Muncy, depending on what you go. You'd have 5 or 6 guys that are left-handed hitters in that starting lineup. So it makes you very left-handed heavy. And then the question is, you're paying Chris Taylor a lot of money, over $15 million a year. You just re-signed him to a long-term deal to come back to the team. He was the left fielder for most of this season. You also went out and got Trace Thompson from the Detroit Tigers for cash considerations. He's been crushing it since he got into the Dodgers and been playing very well and has absolutely impacted the team when Chris Taylor's been hurt. But Chris Taylor's ready to come back here in the next week or so. In fact, I think he's going to join the team in San Francisco starting on Monday. And he may go out on a real quick rehab assignment and then come back and join the team. But now if Chris Taylor is back and healthy, you have Chris Taylor, you have Jake Lamb, a guy that they called up who's been playing well, another left-handed bat. You have Trace Thompson, you have Gavin Lux who plays left field. So if you were to get Soto, I would imagine some of those guys we just mentioned would have to go back to the Nationals in return. Otherwise, you just have too many guys and not enough places to play them. So that's what that lineup would look like. But if you could imagine for the next 3 years, Juan Soto in your lineup, batting cleanup with an outfield of him, Cody Bellinger, and Mookie Betts, that's just phenomenal.
Mm-hmm. What are your thoughts on the upcoming series against San Francisco and then having to play San Diego?
Yeah, I mean, this really at this point, the Dodgers have kind of distanced themselves from those two teams in the division. They just swept a 4-game series with San Francisco recently. I believe they're almost 18 games ahead of San Francisco right now. So even if they were to lose that series in San Francisco or get swept, they would still have a monster lead over the Giants in the division. The Giants are still fighting for that second and third wild card spot. The Padres, as I mentioned, I think are 12 back right now. I think that lead is safe. It's the largest lead over a second place team of any division in Major League Baseball. So it is big series coming up, but when you have this big of a cushion, even if you lose the series, you're not gonna, be in a position where you're actually worried about these other team catching you. One question I have when the Dodgers do get back home for that Padres series you mentioned is I want to talk to Dave Roberts, and I want to ask him, when you've built up this big of a lead here entering into August, and I know the season's an extra week long, it's going to be mid-October now, but if you have a 12, 15 game lead on the second place team in your division, and you have the best record in the National League, the best record in baseball, and you have a big lead over the Giants, a wild card team, at what point does that become a luxury in the sense that you can now maybe rest guys? Maybe, give Julio Urias a week off or something. Maybe skip a start for Julio Urias, give him some rest because he's going to be pitching deep. Tyler Anderson hasn't probably pitched this much in a long time. He's been great for the Dodgers. Maybe you skip a start for him, give him a little rest. Trey Turner, Freddie Freeman, they've been playing every single game this entire season. Maybe you want to give them a day off here or there, get them off their feet. So you wonder at that point when that becomes a luxury, because for the Dodgers, I would imagine once they have this big lead, all they're looking at right now is the postseason. And as long as they finish with either the first or second best record and they have a bye going in, so they're automatically into a 5-game NLDS, they don't have to worry about a 3-game wild card series, then I think they're going to be starting to look towards October and the playoffs here with such a big lead and be able to kind of rest guys and make sure everyone's healthy for the playoffs.
What are your thoughts on the east side of the league, and what are your thoughts on the Yankees, the Red Sox, and Tampa Bay and Atlanta?
So both the East, the American League and the National League East is what you're referring to. Let's start in the National League, where the Dodgers, in my opinion, have their stiffest competition as far as a team that I believe could knock them out of the postseason, and that is the New York Mets. And the reason why I say that is because my opinion on this matter when it comes to postseason is pitching wins championships. Starting pitching in particular, and good bullpen is what's going to win you a World Series. And I don't know right now the health of Jacob deGrom. I know he's now thrown another rehab start. I know he's close to returning. But if Jacob deGrom is healthy, he's the best pitcher in all of baseball. And so you're talking about a potential 7-game series with the New York Mets in which Jacob deGrom would pitch game 1, Max Scherzer would pitch game 2, and I don't know if they would go with Carlos Carrasco in a 3rd game, or Chris Bassett, or Tawan Walker, who's had a great season as well. You only really need 3 or 4 starting pitchers in a 7-game series. And arguably the Mets have two of the best in all the sport. And the Dodgers, they're built for the regular season, right? They're a regular season juggernaut. They have 6, 7 starting pitchers that are great. They have all-stars and Tony Gonsolin and Tyler Anderson that probably people have never even heard of up until this all-star game. So they have good pitching, but they don't have like Jacob deGrom, future Hall of Famer kind of pitching, or Max Scherzer, future Hall of Famer kind of pitching. They have that in Clayton Kershaw. If Walker Buehler can come back and be the lights out big game starting pitcher he's been for the last 3 years, that helps them. They probably have way more depth than the New York Mets, both on offense and defense and in the bullpen. But that would scare me, a matchup with the Mets, because if you're throwing a healthy DeGrom in game 1 and a healthy Scherzer game 2, that's a scary prospect for any team. So that's the one team that gives me concern. Atlanta, obviously, they're the champs. So you have to respect the champs. In order to be the champs, you have to beat the champs. So it'd be a great series to see if the Dodgers, we get to have a rematch with the Braves, a team that they know very well, who they've met in the NLCS the last 2 years. So that would be interesting as well. But I think if healthy, and remember Clayton Kershaw and Max Muncy and Max Scherzer, for that matter, were not healthy in that NLCS last year. So I think if they're healthy, the Dodgers are better than the Braves, not only starting pitching, but also on offense. Remember, the Braves lost a lot of those big pieces from the World Series last year, including Freddie Freeman, who's now on the Dodgers. So I think I would take the Dodgers, if healthy, over the Braves. It's the Mets that really concern me in the National League East. And now in the American League East, I'm hoping that we, for the first time in a long time, something that fans have wanted for years and seeming like there always was a chance it could happen, going all the way back to like 2016 and 17, but never did. And that's a Dodgers-Yankees World Series. I think baseball would happy with that. Fans would be happy with that. Even old school fans, the OGs, we like to call them, who remember the Dodgers and Yankees battles back in the 50s and 60s and 70s. I think even they would be happy to watch a Dodgers-Yankees World Series. The question is, can both teams take care of their business to get there? Because I was just looking up all the stats recently: runs per game, best batting average per game, most home runs per game, best ERA in the game, best bullpen ERA. And if you break down all these stats, it's Dodgers, Yankees 1 and 2 in almost every single stat in all of Major League Baseball. They just appear so far to be that much ahead of the pack in the game. You know, what are we at? I don't know, almost 100 games, over 100 games into the season. So those two teams appear to be 1-2. In years past, we thought they were on a collision course to meet in the Fall Classic. It hasn't happened. I really hope this is the year that we see them meet in the World Series, because I think it would be an absolutely incredible World Series that would go 7 games and just break all sorts of ratings as far as what baseball is concerned.
Just a curiosity, I'm actually living with one of my best friends from college, and he's a diehard Yankee fan. And I wanted your perspective on what will go down once Tuesday gets here, and what the Yankees would possibly do.
Yeah, you know, that's an interesting question. They were in on Luis Castillo, and they obviously didn't get him. So I think they're probably going to try to get one starting pitcher. Obviously, it's not going to be Castillo now, but I do think they make a move and get an arm, even if it's just for the back end of that starting rotation. I think they do that they don't have the depth that the Dodgers do in the starting rotation. So I think they need to add some depth like that. I'm not sure who that could be. I don't know if Zach Greinke's available from the Royals. Obviously, they just had a trade with Andrew Benintendi from the Royals, so they're able to negotiate with that front office very well. It could be that. I've heard rumors that they would be in on Juan Soto, but I don't think they've checked in on him lately, and he's not what sources have told me as far as they be in the final 3. So I think they might be set offensively. I think they actually might end up trading Joey Gallo out of New York before that happens. So I see the Yankees adding one starting pitcher before Tuesday. I'd look out for the Toronto Blue Jays. You know, they're a team that I think is going to be in the postseason this year. They're sneaky good. They have the starting pitching. It's another team that might go out and get some pitchers at the deadline as well. Tampa Bay is always very, very good. Always a great regular season team. We'll see how they fare in the postseason this year, but that AL East is pretty stacked. I think almost all the teams are above 500. Boston's in last place, and they look like a playoff team, right before the All-Star break. So who knows if they become sellers or not, because they're still in that second wild card hunt. But I'd look out for Toronto in that division. But the one team that scares me in the entire American League, especially if they get better on Tuesday at the trade deadline, is the Houston Astros. The Astros
Mhm.
seemingly have had the Yankees number, not just this season, but in the past like handful of years as well, going all the way back to 2017. So if I'm the Yankees, I'm looking at the Houston Astros and trying to add pieces to find ways to beat the Houston Astros. And one of that is to counteract the great right-handed starting pitching the Astros have with guys like Justin Verlander, by getting a guy like Andrew Benintendi a really good, solid left-handed bat, which they've already gone and done.
What do you think about this upcoming series between Houston and Boston?
I think Houston mops the floor with them. I really do.
Yeah.
Boston right now is trending in an entirely different direction. I'm not sure why they've been struggling so much.
Mhm.
It seemed like once they got Chris Sale back and he broke his finger and had to go back on the IL, things have kind of gone downhill for Boston since then. I watched a couple of those blowout losses that they had, and man, they were making mistakes that you don't even see little leaguers make. And then that's not a good sign for Boston. So I think Houston, which to me is, in my opinion, probably the best team in the American League, but just seems to struggle against teams in their own division. But when they play the Yankees, they get up and they play very well against them. And also don't sleep on the Seattle Mariners. They just
Mhm.
got Luis Castillo. It looks like they're going to finally break that postseason curse that they haven't been able to make the longest tenure in baseball. They haven't made the postseason. So Seattle will be in the postseason. They'll have a great now starting pitcher in Luis Castillo. They have the reigning Cy Young Award winner in Robbie Ray. So they have good pitching. They have up and coming young hitters. They have talent abundance all around. They could make a run here and surprise some people and turn heads. I don't think they're going to catch the Astros, but if they can get past that first round, the wild card games, they might be able to upset a team like the Yankees or Astros. But as far as this upcoming series, I think Houston just mops the floor with Boston.
Yeah, I totally agree with you. I think Milwaukee's a team to keep an eye on. They're getting hotter as the days go by. And what do you think about them at the trade deadline and once the playoffs get here?
Yeah, Milwaukee, I would see making a move or two as well. Where Milwaukee is strong is in their starting pitching. Obviously, they have Corbin Burns. They have Bob Woodruff. They have a lot of guys that are good in their starting pitching with Brandon Woodruff and Burns at the top of that. After that, it's not looking too great, in my opinion, after that. So maybe they try and go add a starting pitcher that they can slot in at number 3. They also have, in my opinion, the best bullpen in all of baseball with Devin Williams and Josh Hader. I think the Brewers' strategy to beat you is outpitch you, have a lead going into like the 7th inning, and there's no way you're going to beat them. And that's been their strategy though for a few years now. And obviously they haven't been able to get over the hump and get to the World Series. But you're right, they're playing well now. Outside the Dodgers and the Mets, they're the 3 hottest teams in the entire National League. They're still looking at St. Louis in their rearview mirror, and St. Louis, I think, is going to make some moves. St. Louis is a team that's in on Juan Soto, by the way. And wouldn't that really help them if they could get Juan Soto at the trade deadline? And that might make the Cardinals the favorite to catch the Brewers and win the NL Central. But I do like the Brewers. I definitely like the Brewers in a wild card series, which as of today, they would be playing like the final wild card team if the playoffs were to start today. And I'm not sure who they would be facing. I think it would be like Philly or St. Louis. And I think they could beat either of those teams in a 3-game series because you're throwing Burns and Woodruff 1-2. It would then be after that when you go into a 5 or 7-game series. And you guess you got Burns and Woodruff, but after that, they don't have the depth. I would like whatever team would face them in a series. I think the other team would beat them, but the Brewers are sneaky good, and I see them winning the first round. It just depends on if they can get the right pieces to make a deeper run into the postseason and try to finally get over the hump. But I still think Dodgers and Mets are the teams to watch out for and beat.
And my last question is, what are your expectations on the pitching matchup for tomorrow?
For the Dodgers and the Rockies,
Yeah,
or for another game?
for Dodgers Rockies.
I think you have the NL All-Star Game loser, Tony Gonsolin, pitching on Sunday in an afternoon game. I'm not sure who's throwing for the Rockies. Is it Marquez? Is it Herman Marquez? I think it's Herman Marquez. I'm not totally sure on that, but I'm pretty sure it's Herman Marquez. This is going to be interesting. Tony Gonsolin has not been the same pitcher he was for most of the first half. In his last, I would say, and I'm not even going to just say his last start, in his last few starts. Now, I've talked to him recently, and I talked to him just after his last start against the Washington Nationals when he took his first loss of the season against a team that arguably has the worst record in the entire National League. And then before that, he struggled against the St. Louis Cardinals. He gave up 5 runs. And then before that, even though he got the win, he struggled against the Cubs a little bit, allowing 2 runs. So he hasn't been as dominant as he's been before. He's not really fooling guys. He's not a swing and miss type of pitcher. He's not going to overwhelm you with his stuff. What he's done differently this year than in years past, and what he told me was his goal going to this season, and this might have to do with the fact that MLB has changed the balls, so they're not flying as far. But he said, I'm just going to go out there, I'm going to throw strikes, and if they want to hit it, I'm going to let them hit it. And I have all-stars and gold glovers all across the defense behind me for the Dodgers, guys like Cody Bellinger, Mookie Betts, Trey Turner, Freddie Freeman. So he says, I'm going to let them hit it. I'm going to let the best defense in the National League and in the game go do what they do and get the outs. And so far it's been working. Now, teams have seen enough of Tony Gonsolin now that they can start to make adjustments. So I think what you're going to see happening here in the second half of the season is teams are going to adjust their approach and their strategy against Tony Gonsolin at the plate. And will Tony Gonsolin then be able to adjust back in this little game of cat and mouse and be able to figure out what hitters are now doing differently against him and be able to do different things with his pitches in order to continue to have the success he had in the first half. So I think playing at altitude at Coors Field, I don't think we're going to see a 6 or 7 1-run or shutout performance by Tony Gonsolin. I think he's going to get hit a little bit again. He might give up 4 or 5 runs. Now, the fact of the matter is it's Coors Field. It's Herman Marquez, who's pitched well this year, but the Dodgers know him very well. So this could be a high-scoring game where maybe, Tony Gonsolin doesn't factor into the decision. But I don't think at altitude it's going to be the pitching duel many people might think. If this was at Dodger Stadium, this could be a 2-0, 2-1 game. But I think at Coors Field, this might be a little bit of a high-scoring game, and I wouldn't be surprised to see Gonsolin struggle a little bit as far as giving up 4 or 5 runs.
It definitely should be a very interesting 48 hours from now, and I'm definitely looking forward to all the work you do for the Dodgers, and it's going to be a very entertaining rest of the season for sure. And I want to thank you so much for coming on.
Yeah, thank you. I appreciate you. Anytime, just let me know. I'm happy to come on. And there's a series the Dodgers travel, because we were talking about the Brewers, at Milwaukee in the middle of August, a 4-game series. It's going to be a good measuring stick game for both teams just to see where they line up, because the Dodgers really haven't had to face any tough competition here in a while. They haven't had to play the Mets recently. And like we said, the Brewers and the Mets are the 2 hottest teams right now in the National League. The Dodgers don't play the Yankees this year, so they haven't had to worry about them. They don't play the Astros, so they haven't had to worry about them. So when they play Milwaukee there in the middle of August in that 4-game series, where you're definitely going to likely to see Burns and Woodruff, we're going to finally get to see what a playoff matchup between those 2 teams is going to look like. And I'm excited for that series in Milwaukee, August 15th through 18th.
I definitely keep an eye on that series, as I will be watching the Phillies trying to get that final wildcard spot. And thanks again.
You're very welcome. Thank you. And yeah, like you said, for all your listeners, make sure to go follow my work on Twitter at Michael J. Duarte, all social media, TikTok, Instagram, Michael J. Duarte. And I'll be sharing what I'm hearing from sources as the trade deadline gets closer here to Tuesday. So pay attention and we'll see what ends up happening and how it all shakes out. And remember, fans, no more waiver deadlines. So whatever happens on Tuesday, that's it. That's how your team's going to look heading into the postseason.
Thanks.
Thank you.